Welcome back. It's Locked On NFL Draft, part of the Locked On Network. Thanks for making us your first listen today. There's a lot to talk about as we go through some of the strangeness that has begun. It's almost to the trade deadline. We know you guys are into that too. So we're going to talk about what makes a rookie quarterback ready to play in this league. What are the Broncos going to do now with their draft as they have traded Von Miller, and a historic start for a couple of wide receivers whose draft prospects weren't necessarily at the top of their classes? Welcome to Locked On NFL Draft.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On NFL Draft. I'm your host, former NFL and NFL defensive back, Eric Crocker, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Ryan Tracy from Locked On NFL Chiefs. How you doing, man?
I'm hanging in. It's Monday afternoon. Chiefs are going to play tonight, so it's nice to talk about something else right now and get your mind off that kind of thing. Plenty to go on right now, right?
Yeah, plenty to go on. And I've been kind of active on Twitter. If you guys don't follow me, at Eric_Crocker on Twitter. And I've been trying to figure out and kind of wrap my head around what makes a quarterback more ready now than maybe the other prospects, right? And I think I've heard some people say, like Quincy Avery, he's a quarterback coach, quarterback trainer, and he said he never thinks a rookie quarterback is ready. And I've heard other people say that as well about prospects. But I think when you take the pulse of Twitter and even people that talk about football, the draft media and things like that, they make it seem like other people are more ready than others, I guess there's some kind of difference. So where I'm going with this, or where I kind of started thinking about this, is as a 49er, person that covers the 49ers, they drafted Trey Lance.
Right.
And obviously everybody looks at Trey Lance and they're like, oh, raw, not ready. But then I watch him play, and he had the second highest rookie debut as any quarterback in this class. You saw a lot of things that you really like. You saw a lot of things that he needed to work on. And we've seen the same things from the other quarterbacks, right? We've seen them all have their struggles. We've seen them all have their things that they need to improve on. So I started thinking, like, what qualifies a guy to be more ready than the other? And some of the questions that I've gotten have been, the competition they play against in college. And I'm like, well, that doesn't seem to make a difference with Trey Lance, because same things he was doing in college, he's doing in the NFL. And, you have guys like Trevor Lawrence, and, we've seen his game really up and down, and maybe the circumstances of his situation. And I'm like, man, I don't know. It seems like he has good receivers, but things aren't going all that great, coaching staff, whatever the case is. And I felt like there have been a lot of like moving the goalpost when it comes to these prospects. Yeah. But one thing that one response I did get, I felt like made probably the most sense to me, was a quarterback is deemed more ready or not ready depending on the quarterback that they have ahead of them. And in the 49ers case, that's Jimmy Garoppolo, right? So Trey Lance is not ready because he has Jimmy Garoppolo ahead of him, who is better suited to take hold of the offense right now. And, you don't have to go through those rookie lumps if you don't have to, I guess. So I was like, okay, that kind of makes sense. And then you have Zach Wilson. Yep. And, he's going through his ups and downs, and everybody can just say, well, it's because he's a rookie, and, he's going through the same things as other rookies. And I'm like, okay, well, does that make him more or less ready? Then he doesn't play. And you have a guy, Mike White. Now, Mike White has been in the NFL for a little bit, but I think this is like his first start or his first extended play. And Mike White comes in, and everybody has said everything about the Jets. The offense is really bad. The weapons aren't great. They're not coming through for their guys. And I'm not saying this is going to be consistent for Mike White, but he comes in and he throws for over 400 yards against the Cincinnati Bengals, which is a good team. Their defense has played well. They went toe-to-toe with guys like Aaron Rodgers. I believe heading into that game, they had a record of like 5-2. So the Bengals have been playing well, but Mike White comes through and just kind of destroys that defense, plays well. And now I got to thinking, maybe are we thinking maybe Zach Wilson isn't really ready to be that guy yet? And what is the right approach here? Do you sit Zach Wilson, or I don't think you can go backwards now on that, right? But you have a guy Mike White who do we think Mike White might give them the best chance to win right now? Not saying long term. Clearly,
Sure.
Zach Wilson, he has big time ability, all the things that everybody liked about him in the draft, but right now he's kind of struggling. And do you want him to continue to go through these struggles and maybe he'll get out of it? Or do you go with a guy like Mike White who led you to a victory and really played exceptionally well?
From my point of view, and it is the 50,000 foot level, not as somebody who's like a quarterback coach or somebody who works with them. Those guys have a unique insight into what they're capable of mentally, particularly when they make mistakes. How well do they rebound? I think that's a big thing that you get from interviews that you don't see on the field, that you have to build into the evaluation that we as outside of NFL organizations don't necessarily get unless you get with their agent or you get some one-on-one time with these prospects, right? For me, there's no way that you leave Mike White in there, because as good as he performed, there's a couple of things that are telltale for me. On the positive side, he understands the offense. He's been there since 19, right? So he's got the reps in the offense in practice. And I think that's honestly what tells you, over 82% completion percentage. That tells me that he knows this offense, that he understands what he needs to do. But he also, while he did throw 3 touchdowns, he also threw a couple of picks. And that tells me also that he doesn't quite understand what the defense are always going to do or how to make adjustments there. For me, this looks both a guy who's ready in one aspect and maybe not 100% ready in the other, right? So for me, I have to go with the draft pick because you've put him into the fire. You started him baking, right? You got to finish him off. The pizza's like, the cheese is barely melted on the pizza. You know what I mean? Like, you got to get it all the way there. And for me, I think it all comes back to the evaluations even pre-draft about how does a guy learn? Wilson has physical tools. Trey Lance has physical tools. Mike White probably didn't have the physical tools that you could put up against that, right? So for them, it's about there's your starting point, but how do you learn offenses? How well can you handle the multiplicity of things that you have to deal with as a signal caller in the NFL? And for me, I think the upside when you're ready is all about the mental side of the ball.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. Do you think out of this class right now, and I'll just kind of throw out a few names and you let me know. And again, we have not really dove into the film on these prospects yet. We haven't made, just really legit notes on their strengths and weaknesses. But as of right now, from what you could tell, I'll throw out a few names and you let me know if you think one guy is a little bit more pro ready than the other guys. All right, we'll go with Malik Willis. I don't know why I was thinking Malik, right? Malik Willis.
Right.
Desmond Ridder.
Okay.
And our guy, Matt Corral, who we've been talking about on the previous podcast. Do any of those guys jump out to you that you say, you know what, I would prefer this guy start today as opposed to maybe one of the other guys?
Maybe against each other, I don't know that I could differentiate them yet. Like there's pluses and minuses in each of their games, at least from what I've seen live to this point. But for me, it's about, like you were hinting at before, who's the incumbent starter? Because for me, especially, Corral, I think relies on his athleticism. He's going to use his wheels a little bit more than the other guys are. Although I think Ridder can get out of the pocket and make some noise as well. For me, it's, do you want to add that aspect? Are you trying to, like, quote unquote, Kyler Murray your offense a little bit and have a guy that can threaten with his legs? Maybe that gives you the spark to get in there. But for all of them, I don't see the attacking through the air, the exploitation of defenses, especially controlling deep safeties with eyes, et cetera, like that. Some of the finer points of quarterback play, I don't see that from any of them. I will tell you, the guy that has the advantage for me in terms of having decent arm talent, but has the most mental experience, I think is probably Pickett. And of any of them, I would say he's probably ready to walk in and have the highest floor, but maybe not the lowest ceiling as well.
And he's also a guy, I believe this is his senior year, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, he's kind of been around a while and he's a little bit more seasoned. And that's something we're not really seeing in, coming out of the draft anymore, right? I think that was something like in the 80s or 90s where guys would stay a little bit longer. Now guys the moment they can declare, they'll declare it. Even if they are, redshirt sophomores, which we saw with Sam Darnold, a guy who played 2 years of college football, dipped to the NFL, and we've seen him in his transition be a little bit shaky. We'll get more into a lot of these quarterbacks and the process. I know that's going to be a hot topic this offseason, trying to figure out who exactly is the guy, who's going to be the most pro-ready guy, who's going to be the first guy. You got the Detroit Lions, who have not won a game, and I know they're going to be looking to really revamp their quarterback position. I don't think Jared Goff is the guy, but we don't know if it's that one guy in this class that's going to really help put a team over the top. But you know what? As we come back, we're going to talk about the Denver Broncos. They just had this kind of blockbuster trade to a team. And how does that trade impact the Broncos moving forward into the draft? Stay tuned. Hey, Locked On to NFL Draft fans. This is your host, former NFL and NFL defensive back, Eric Crocker, and with an incredible offer for you guys that buy gas right now. And what you guys need to do, you need to hear about Get Upside. My listeners are making up to 25 cents for every gallon of gas every time they fill up. How do you do this, man? You just go download the free Get Upside app in your either Google Play Store or in your Apple App Store. All right. Use the promo code Touchdown when you download the app and get a bonus 25 cents off per gallon on your first fill up. That's up to 50 cents cash back. Don't pay full price at a pump ever again. Get cash back using Get Upside. Just download the app free and use promo code Touchdown to get up to 50 cents a gallon cash back on your first fill up. Some people who drive a lot, they're making as much as $200-$300 a month in cash back, and there's no catch at all. That is cash that gets added right back into your pockets and into your account. You can cash out anytime by using your bank account, PayPal, or e-gift card, or Amazon gift cards or any brand that is applicable. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code Touchdown to get up to 50 cents a gallon cash back on your first tank. All right. Again, use the code Touchdown and go do that right now. All right, Ryan. You have the Denver Broncos, and they made a blockbuster trade to the Rams, who are the division rivals with the San Francisco 49ers. So 49er fans aren't going to like that very much, but looked like it was a couple second day, day two picks. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the details. I don't know if you've seen the details, but
second and a third here in 2022.
Okay, man. So did the Rams not have draft picks for the first 3 rounds?
They still have a remaining third, a fifth, and a seventh, I believe, are their picks. Like, we might not see a Rams draft this year. I don't know if they keep going like this. Who knows?
And I'm assuming if they, win the Super Bowl, they'll take that.
Right.
But okay, Von Miller. I mean, Hall of Famer, I'm sure. Just dynamic edge rusher. Texas A&M. He's been just a pleasant to watch his entire career. I remember him coming out, and as somebody, 49er fan and everything, watching the 49ers draft Alden Smith and seeing Von Miller and those two guys and how they were at the time, just dynamic pass rushers and all these numbers that they were throwing up like video games. He's moved on now. He's getting a little bit longer in the tooth, a little bit older now, maybe not what he quite once was. And the Broncos might be going through a little transition and saying, you know what, we're going to get out from underneath the contract like that. They still have Chubb out there as an edge rusher, but they're probably going to be looking to maybe fix that position moving forward. Where do you think they kind of head in the draft? And obviously I know some of this depends on where they land, but there are definitely some good edge rushers in this class. I think I saw somebody yesterday say this is a really deep edge rushing class. Do any names jump out to you that might be a good fit for the Denver Broncos?
There's quite a number, and I think it also signals a shift here. There's a lot of maybes that go into this, right? Because right now they're sitting at 500, so we got to think that they're going to end up picking. I don't know, the end of the season is going to go so great for them, so I think they're going to fall a little bit below 500, but somewhere between 16 and maybe all the way up to 8th, somewhere in that range is my guess for where they end up in this draft class. And you can't replace Von Miller. In fact, I did a study on my 2 major metrics. If you guys haven't checked out Rogue Analytics, you can check that out at rogueapc.com, where I track pressure rate and finish rate for NFL players. Do the Bear and the Hawk and all the major metrics for the college guys. We'll get into that later in the offseason here. But he is still producing at a 15% pressure rate, which is in line with what he was doing plus minus about 3% over the last 6 years. So it really is just about the age. And what I'm hearing is that they didn't think they're going to be able to re-sign him this offseason. So that plays a part of it too. So what did they do? They went and got themselves 2 top 100 picks. And I think that is a very, very clear signal that wherever they end, especially if they do end up right around 500 and they're that 16-ish range, that they're going to use one of those picks in order to move up to take one of the top pass rushers. But there's enough here that I think if they can't get that done, they still have their options behind them. Obviously, Thibodeau's going to be, you'd have to put a couple of 6 picks together to get all the way there to snag him, right? But like, is Hutchinson on their their docket here? Have they already seen enough that they know who they want to target? I think Karlaftis might be a guy that fits in with them pretty well, because I think when you look at Bradley Chubb on the other side, they're not necessarily looking to stay with a Von Miller type speed rusher first kind of thing. They're looking for a little bit more power, in my opinion, but that's also dependent on Vic Fangio staying on the head coaching spot. Who knows if that's going to happen? But I think what you're seeing is that it's just preparation for this draft to have the ammunition to move around where they need to be.
Yeah, and, you talked about maybe what they aren't looking at, and just kind of looking at some of these guys. And I remember a couple years ago, you had this star-studded pass rushing class, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of this class where you had you got Nick Bosa at the top, and then there were other guys that you had the Josh Allen, edge rusher that from Kentucky that ended up going to the Jacksonville Jaguars. You had Farrell, who ended up going number 4 overall to the Raiders, and that was a little bit of a shock, because I know a lot of people like Josh Allen a little bit higher. But also, you had a guy, Brian Burns, who slipped a little bit, who I thought from a pure pass rushing standpoint, like his moves, just the his pass rush moves, his hands, his quickness, his athleticism, the versatility to be able to drop him in coverage. I'm like, man, this is a guy who I would assume people would be really high on, but he kind of slid to that mid-round range, and the Panthers were able to grab him. And I look in this class, and there's somebody very similar to him, and we've talked about him already before, but the outside linebacker from Georgia, Adam Anderson. Again, he's kind of built a little bit more like Brian Burns. He was a guy that kind of, when watching him, that was the first thing that kind of jumped out to me. I don't know if I necessarily see like the polishedness that we saw from Brian Burns as a pass rusher, but just all the physical abilities are there. He still definitely has kind of that long, lean frame, and maybe has to, add a little bit of muscle to that. But do you think that Anderson is someone who could potentially be a good fit for the Broncos if they do kind of stand pat in the middle of that round?
If they do, I think place strength, contact strength is going to be an issue there, because they still want to have, when they go to their nickel, a down 3-point stance guy that can survive contact with what is not the most physical division in the NFL, but one that generally emphasizes tackle play. I'm not sure if they want to have him standing up or how they'd go about making that switch. I think they want somebody more power in him myself, but I think if you're going to go with more of a 3-4 outside backer type, he's got to be at the very top of the list in this draft class.
Right. And there, clearly there are some really good edge rushers in this class. And I think, a guy that you touched on, Aiden Hutchinson, Drake Jackson, who's, still trying to figure it all out and bring everything together. Nick Bonito from Oklahoma. So a star-studded draft class, man. I'm curious to see how this whole thing plays out, especially at the edge position, and definitely for Denver. But when we come back, we're going to talk about a couple receivers that weren't highly touted guys coming out of college, but they are definitely doing an exceptional job and on a historic pace at this point in the NFL season. Stay tuned. In life, we are all bound for different things. And with beachbound.com vacations, you can be bound for adventure, bound for passion, bound for discovery, or bound for togetherness, bound for immersion, bound for rejuvenation, or you may just be bound to be, encountering the unexpected. Personally, when I'm at a beach resort, I'm bound to end up at the pool or at the bar, creating my own taco flight. As long as I've got good view, good vibes, good drink in my hand, I'll be happy as can be. So with beachbound.com, you can find the perfect beach vacation for you, no matter what you are looking for, no matter where you're trying to go. What are you bound for? Visit beachbound.com today. All right, Ryan, just like we all, expected, you have a couple guys here. Cooper Kupp through 8 games, 924 receiving yards. His touchdowns is through the roof. I mean, goodness gracious, I don't know what's going on right now. And then Deebo Samuel, again, through he's played 7 games, 819 receiving yards. These guys are on a historic pace. And I think the thing that stands out to me most about these guys, they are doing it 2 totally different ways. You have one guy that's doing it with just pure route running ability from the slot position, winning with timing and rhythm, especially with his quarterback, Matthew Stafford. They're on the same page. Then you have Deebo Samuel that's really just trying to figure out how to do it any which way possible. He caught a 50-yard pass on a post route. He took a screen on 3rd and 20. He took a screen 83 yards and just barely stepped out of bounds while diving into the end zone. I mean, it's really weird. I don't want to say weird, but intriguing to see how two guys are winning two totally different ways. And I'm really curious to see how, again, that kind of shapes the landscape of how we view receivers coming out of college.
Yeah, I mean, the application of a specific skill set, I think, goes a long way. Remember, Deebo was like not a guy that they thought was going to play a lot outside. Like they were talking about him as a gadget player at times there pre-draft. And I think he's shown that he's got the versatility. It's not gadgets. It's not the little trick plays all the time. He has a number of skills that lend itself to his game. And Kupp is also a guy that I think was just underheralded. Go Eastern Washington Eagles. Good for you. Not a school that produces NFL talent a lot, right? So I think these two guys are very much the case in point for it's not always the first round picks that you have to have the wide receiver talent at. I mean, it's not running back where I clearly think that running back should be drafted outside of day one and probably towards the bottom half of day two. But wide receivers, you can still get good value later in the draft. And these guys are two that show that. I mean, a 2nd round pick at number 36 and what, a 3rd in like the mid 90s, was it? No, 69. I'm sorry. So still, Kupp was the top of the 3rd at 69.
Wow.
So yeah, it says a lot there that you can find talent at different levels if you know what you want and you can match that talent pre-draft to what you're looking to do on the field. I like the more of a defined role when you're drafting in mind rather than trying to just a lot of teams just want the best talent that they have, their total ranking overall, and will make it work. I like the basketball team mentality of slotting a guy into a specific role that we're going to use in X way.
Yeah, and it is just so crazy just to see the chemistry that Cooper Kupp has with Matthew Stafford this early on. I think that's one thing I hope a lot of these younger guys that are coming out of college start to pay attention to, right? Like just how to build a rapport with your quarterback to try to make that transition easier. Now, Cooper Kupp, he's somebody that, I mean, he's been played well. He's dealt with some injuries. I believe it was like a torn ACL a couple years ago, but he's had multiple 1,000-yard seasons. But right now what he's doing, I mean, this is special. It's kind of, I don't know what's halfway because it's 17-game season now, but about halfway through the season, and he's done almost 1,000 yards. And I don't know if he'll be able to continue this pace that he's on, definitely an historic pace. But if he can, I mean, we're talking about one of the best seasons of all time. And we've seen other slots have good seasons like this. You got Wes Welker, Edelman. Now, both of those guys, they played with Tom Brady, the great, where they utilized their slot receiver. Do you think that there's a chance that Cooper Kupp kind of leads this charge in how we possibly view the slot position? Because right now it's tough when you look at a guy coming out of college. That's the same thing with Justin Jefferson, where a lot of people are like, oh, Justin Jefferson, he's coming out. Oh, he's just a slot. Do you think that when you see a guy have a season like this, and maybe some of the success that Justin Jefferson has had early on might change people's thoughts on guys that play more in the slot in college?
I think so, or at least guys that can rotate in. I think there's a lot of overlap of what you can do with a quote unquote slot guy and an X. And a Z, so that you have your like kind of big bodied X that can lock down the line of scrimmage on the other side. But those guys can move around. And you can get some matchup changes there. I think that's really intriguing to a lot of people. And I will say this: if you're a slot receiver in college right now, you got to feel like your stock is climbing because I think both these guys are a very good demonstration of what we're seeing on the other side of the ball that a lot of people have been talking about the last couple of weeks about how much more too high safety sets the defenses in the NFL are playing. And so it's opening up the middle, someplace that a receiver with good speed, it doesn't even have to be great speed. I think Kupp was like 4.62 or something. He's not a blazer, but he can exploit the middle of the field where there's gaps in the defense. I think that's going to become even more important as we go forward.
Yeah, and in the case of Deebo Samuel, and talking about just that type of, we've talked about a little bit before, how that kind of, you view him, you see guys like Chenault has that same kind of body style, that same type of, kind of ability and play style where they win more with just like pure athleticism and brute physicality and you see them be able to do that consistently. And I think that's the biggest thing. Can the guy do that consistently? I think Deebo Samuel right now had a terrific rookie year, injury riddled second year, but right now in his third year, he's showing like, nah, man, like I'm a legit receiver. I should be mentioned with some of the other guys from my class, like the DK Metcalfs, the AJ Browns, the Terry McLaurens, that have been getting more hype than him. But right now, early on, historic pace, and I believe when I last checked it was 1,989 yards. That's what he's on pace with right now. Now, again, that would break Calvin Johnson's record, but also Calvin Johnson did it in 16 games, not 17. So that's something to keep note on. But, man, talented receivers right now, talented receivers coming out in this class. I can't wait to start to really dive in to this class and kind of see where guys stack up, because right now, man, I keep looking at Drake London and I was like, oh, man, he's hurt. So I gotta take my fandom to another guy for the rest of this college football season. But you guys, man, stay with us. Keep it locked right here. We'll be getting into much more of these prospects and how they're looking and how their game kind of transitions to the NFL as we continue right here on Locked On NFL Draft.